Hey everybody, Dirty Dan here.
So recently I took a trip out to Kings Island in Ohio with a couple buddies of mine, and it was certainly a trip.
Holy Vanilla lemonade that kills you!
Barbecue bacon burger. Barbecue bacon burger. Barbecue bacon burger. Barbecue bacon burger.
So that about sums that up. Now, let's get down to the actual topic of this video. So this whole video starts one night when me and a buddy are, as we normally do, looking through old catalogs, and the first thing that we found was the listing in the Bachmann catalog for the Whistling Tender 282s. But the other thing that we found really interesting was these so-called 460s that Bachmann was producing. When we first saw this, I don't think we stopped laughing for a solid 5 minutes, but after that, then we're like, we gotta find one. So like we always do, we arrange a little search party, and eventually after some digging, we're able to find one of them. So the first one that we found has a really interesting story. So we found the image on Google, and then we started tracing it back to a Reddit post, and ended up finding out the guy that posted it was in my Discord server. And after we talked to him, it turned out he had just found the image somewhere and he didn't actually have it. So that unfortunately led nowhere, but it was still cool to see that. So the second one that we found was actually on eBay, which was good for us, but here's what ended up happening. So I had watched the listing, but I was busy and didn't realize that the auction was ending. Well, of course, Will from Gopher Uppers Trains, he's watching it at the same time, trying to get my attention, and as the auction's ending, he's the one who bids on it and ends up getting it. So massive thank you to him once again for saving the day. Now, even though the engine came with the original box and all the original packing, one, it was completely destroyed, and second, the engine had severe foam damage. Now, when I say severe, that only means in a cosmetic aspect. Mechanically, the engine turned out to be basically brand new, and that was a huge score for us. So how I ended up with the engine was I ended up just paying Will what he paid for it on the auction, and just got it when we went on our Kings Island trip, so it worked out pretty good. So let's take a look at the physical engine itself since I got it home. Now keep in mind, this specific image was taken after I had done all the work to remove the foam damage, but the engine did arrive in fantastic condition. Now let's take a look at what the engine looked like before I had removed the foam. So this is probably some of the worst foam damage I've ever seen, especially on a plastic model. I've seen foam damage on brass engines, but not a lot of plastic models. So it appears as though this engine was stored in some very hot environment for a while, and that's my guess as to how this happened. So unfortunately, I didn't photograph the process of actually removing the foam, but I can still tell you guys how I did it. So the first thing I did was soak the engine in some warm water for a few minutes, and after that, I actually just got a soft bristled toothbrush and just got to work. But after a while, I could tell that the water really wasn't doing a whole lot, and after I had tried some soap, it was clear that it wasn't going to come off. So after that point, I actually applied a little bit of Goo Gone to a Q-tip, which actually seemed to take most of it right off. And after a while, the shell was nice and clean. Now, before we move any farther forward, I want to take a close look at how the foam has affected the plastic. So these two pictures were taken on the foam damage on the side of the cab as well as the front of the boiler. And as you can see, it looks less like foam being stuck to the engine and more as though the foam has melted into the plastic. Now, I don't know if this is a heat thing or a chemical thing. It could be either or. Now, regardless as to how the foam has affected the plastic, it's clear that it's left an imprint and there's no way to get rid of that as far as I'm aware. So what is there to say about this abomination of a locomotive? Well, let's start with the good. So all in all, the graphics on this engine actually aren't bad. The logo on the tender is nice and bright and it looks really good. The detail's good on it, as well as the numbers on the engine. They do look pretty sharp. The fact that this engine actually has the full valve gear does actually bring it up a little bit. It looks really good in motion. Alright, let's move on to the bad, starting with the fact that the tender is literally bigger than the entire locomotive. I would genuinely give just about anything to meet the person responsible for creating this unholy creation. This mold for the tender is the exact same mold that was used with Bachmann's 282s, and that's the main reason as to why it looks so ridiculous. The other main reason as to why this engine looks so weird is that Bachmann literally just took a four-wheeled pilot truck and stuck it on the front of a USRA 060. Now, I absolutely love this model, and the reason why is because it looks so goofy. It is such a strange and awkward looking model, it stands out in any collection. It's so much easier to just write this engine off as a completely unrealistic joke that Bachmann made to make money. And yes, that's true in some regard, as Bachmann does have to make money. They are a company. But I think it's much cooler to appreciate this engine for how different it is. I'm not saying that you have to like this model, and I know that most people won't, but what I am saying is that there's a perspective on everything. You can either hate this model or you can love it. In the short amount of time I've owned this engine, it has 100% climbed right up the list of one of my favorite locomotives I have. Among my collection of weird, awkward, fantasy engines, it's one of the coolest. Now that I've shared with you all how I feel about this locomotive, let's enjoy it in action for a little while to end off the video. I want to thank each and every one of you for watching this video, and I also want to thank Will from Gopher and Upper Strains for hooking me up with this awesome piece of history. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.